Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. 8 games in, fellas. And, well, I don't know how to describe it. Let's start with this. It was a road win against a real football team. Not a great football team, but a real football team that was 6-2 in, some of the more difficult circumstances you're ever going to play in. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Greg Katz, aren't you happy about all that?
Yes, it was a very important win. It keeps us in contention for the thoughts of college football playoffs. Whether we believe that's actually going to happen at the end of the season, what I do know is they're there. They have a good record. They've got plenty of chances to prove it in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And it just not waiting for at Oregon. Iowa looks like it's a team that's going to be a real challenge. I think Friday night, I think Northwestern competes. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to prove that they will deserve consideration as we go forward. But yes, the Nebraska win was a big one. Nebraska fans were into it, black shirted. And quite frankly, the bottom line is, did you win the game? And they won a football game, and it was really important. So congratulations to Lincoln Riley and his team.
Yeah. Yeah, Eric, it's hard to imagine a successful 2025 season if USC loses that game at Nebraska, right? I mean, you have to win that one, both because with a tough Iowa team coming up, with a brutal trip to Eugene coming up, and 2 other games against teams that could beat people. You kind of have to put that in the W column, but also because at some point you just have to win a road game. You just have to. You can't lose every road game to a team with a pulse. So let's celebrate it. Before we start to criticize, Eric, I want you to celebrate. I know you can't wait to tell us all how happy you were that you got to go and drive through Nebraska, hit a coyote, and watch USC beat the Cornhuskers.
That's right. I mean, first of all, about Nebraska fans, everything you hear about them is true. Great fans, great atmosphere. I think it's going to be within 5 years, USC's out there again. Make that trip. Put it on the list. So for the game, if you're talking about 25 season, Michigan at home, Nebraska on the road. Those were the games you had to win to sort of whatever that pecking order is in the Big Ten, like announcing yourself as sort of above the middle of that group where everyone would be. Like, I think that's what you need to do. Now, I think home against Iowa maybe goes in there too, but that's where this Nebraska one is that you had to be able to go do that. And for all the things we'll sort of nitpick and this wasn't great, that wasn't great, whatever, it's hard. Lincoln Riley coach speaks a lot of things. When he says it's hard to go win on the road in the Big Ten against a team like that, it's hard. It's hard to do. So for that, yes, good job. Got it done in a game a year ago. I don't know. It looked like a lot of that stuff a year ago against teams that Minnesota last year, Maryland last year. I think this Nebraska team's better than those teams. And USC didn't get it done on the road last year. So for that one, the steps forward, the ascent of the program, that kind of stuff, I think you come back from this one as just, yeah, job done. Check that box just like you check the box at home against Michigan, and then see what happens the rest of the way.
Yeah. Mark, you've been to a lot of different venues for college football games. Where would you put the atmosphere at this game Saturday?
Definitely up there with that anytime USC travels to Notre Dame type of environment. I mean, it was there. You could feel that energy in the stadium. It was fun. It's something I hope USC fans, ones who didn't make the trip, they were watching on TV. I'm hoping maybe that resonates with them, rubs off a little bit. I would love to see a Cardinal and gold out one time in my lifetime before I leave this earth. But yeah, it was a great environment, and you want to give the team a lot of credit for persevering and winning, especially when they did not look good on the offensive side of the ball. But I do disagree. I have to disagree with Eric. Minnesota's better than Nebraska this year, and they won head to head, and they showed it. So for me, this
Minnesota
is
last year, losing at that Minnesota team last year.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's a game we both, I think everyone here would agree that USC should have won that game as well. USC did find a way to win this game when the passing game wasn't working. But for me, I mean, I'm celebrating the win. I like the win. It was ugly, and I know I'm being uber critical about this team just because I have a standard, and Coach Riley says the standard is the standard. I don't know if they've reached that point yet. They haven't. It's not, I don't know. They haven't reached that standard. My question is, why is it taking so long to get there? And why are we relying? And it's a great story. It's great when you have one walk-on that kind of appears out of nowhere, cool story. You got 3 guys that this program is relying on to get to 6 wins. You got the Miller twins and the kicker to a lesser extent, but these guys are playing, integral roles in USC's victories. That, I think, is one of the underlying questions that, hey, look, USC went on the road. They got to win in a tough environment, and they were able to do it without, guys who should be starting for them.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. It is hard to win on the road. Plenty of good teams struggle on the road when you're playing against somebody with a pulse. And this Nebraska team had a pulse. It's not a great look. Tommy Frazier was beating the drum, but Tommy Frazier wasn't under center. It wasn't that Nebraska. But Nebraska they have a good secondary. They have a good running back. They had a talented quarterback who could make some plays. And they had a really tremendous home field advantage. That's the sort of combination that exists when good teams go in and struggle and win ugly or lose, because it happens every week in college football. So I think we're all on board with the fact that winning ugly is still a win. They had to get the win. They got it. Great. But let's go ahead and jump into it. At some point, USC has to show up and play well on the road, right? They have to. It didn't happen last year. It hasn't yet happened this year. It largely hasn't happened. I'm trying to remember whether in Clay Helton's last couple of years they had a solid road win. I think maybe they had one against Stanford at some point, but Stanford's not even a difficult venue to play in. The reality is, USC at some point has to actually show up and look like they're prepared to win a game on the road. They have to at some point show up and play well on both sides of the ball on the road. They have to keep their composure and not have devastating false start penalties and stupid personal foul penalties on the road. Because if you can't do that, you can't get where Lincoln Riley wants the program to go, right? Elite programs win on the road. Elite programs sometimes lose a road game. Pete Carroll sometimes lost a road game. But most of the time, USC goes on the road. You knew they would show up and they'd win. And that's what Nick Saban's Alabama teams will sometimes lose a road game, but most of the time they'd show up, they'd play well, and they'd win. That's what elite teams do. USC's not close to an elite team because right now USC can't actually show up on the road and look like they practiced that week. Am I wrong, guys? I mean, at some point, you have to turn in a better performance on the road than what USC turns in week after week after week.
Absolutely, Chris. Look, I'm getting a lot of blowback from my Sunday takeaway story, and I might have been a little harsh there. With that being said, it's not about winning big on the road. I'm fine with a 4-point ugly win, but to what you just said, why does this team not look prepared? They had a bye week for this game, and you're coming off that loss against Notre Dame. You think they would come out looking better than they did. Some of it's player execution, some of it's play calling. I mean, I'm not sure how you guys feel about that first 3rd down call on USC's first offensive possession, but it's a cumulative type of thing that snowballs as the game goes along.
Yeah. So, Greg, let's talk about what consistently travels on the road. Passing games don't consistently travel on the road, and USC had a pretty poor passing performance. in fairness, Jaden Mava made a couple of big throws late in the game to get the winning score. But for most of the game, he was about as bad as we'll ever see him play. And the receivers weren't helping because they were dropping balls and sometimes looking like they weren't actually making an effort at balls. It was bad. What travels on the road? Run defense and run game, right? And USC seems to be halfway there at this point, Greg. So let's talk then about that. Let's talk about the USC run game, and then we're going to talk about the USC run defense.
Well, I mean, they didn't deviate from what we've seen. I mean, obviously, the run defense is, I don't know if I classify it as a defense against the run. They, I mean, that was a good running back, by the way, for Nebraska. No embarrassment there whatsoever. But it's been that way no matter who's coaching them. The players are bigger, they're stronger. Are they better mentally to do what they're supposed to do? I mean, how many times can you hear, they weren't staying in the gaps, they weren't doing what they're supposed to do, and that is just, gets down to, do we have smart players that are able to do it or want to do it? As far as SC's running attack, I thought they should have been running the ball more, personally. I think that when you have a situation where you can run the ball, Maeva is kind of, it's a long season. It's, 12 regular season games, and he started off very well for the most part. No pressure yet on him against the teams that we opened up with, and then Purdue. But he's starting to throw, interceptions. He's starting to, make some decisions where you got to say, well, what are you going to do when actually in your mind, just throw the ball away and don't try to make something happen that isn't there. So, it really gets down to, I hate to put it this way because people can come to their own conclusions on it. Is this a smart team? Is this a group of smart players? I'm not saying that we don't have smart players, because I think we do have some smart players. But if you're going to be able to win on the road, you have to be able to do everything you did in practice and take it on the road. I know that there's distractions on the road. I've been to Nebraska before. And, like I think I mentioned it the week before with Pete Carroll's teams. And the mentality of the Pete Carroll team that I was there on the field against Nebraska for the pregame and the fourth quarter. I mean, they were pros in their mind. They were pros. They did exactly what they're supposed to do. They did not pay attention to how good the Nebraska fans are and how they got into it. I will say one thing that bothered me about Nebraska, to be honest with you. I really couldn't stand their uniforms. I think it looks so stupid that they go from what they are to, the big red of Nebraska to what are they doing? Who are they making happy? The players? If the players say, well, they wanted to do it. You know what? It didn't win them a game, right? And the truth of the matter is, I mean, as much as I really appreciated SC winning, of course, Nebraska didn't have their quarterback in the second half, basically, and they didn't have a passing attack. They had a running attack. I think if they put more, if Raiola had played in the second half, I can't say that SC would have won the game, emphatically, because there would have been more pressure on SC's offense to play well, for receivers to catch the ball well. But I'm not complaining, because they did win the game. But they're going to face teams now that are going to have maybe their quarterback for 4 quarters, and a team that would get my attention strongly besides Northwestern would be Iowa, because I think Iowa has that thing, but that's a conversation for another time.
We'll talk about them in a bit, but yeah, look, it's obviously the case that Raiola leaves, doesn't play much at all in the second half of the game. Does that affect things? Probably, but at the same time, he got hurt because Nebraska didn't protect him, and he broke his leg, and both teams were playing with a large number of backups. I mean, it's not like USC has been free of the injury bug this year. So, Greg, you're right. you take them how you can get them. Let's talk about a couple of positive things related to what we've been talking about. On the run game, first of all, King Miller continues to impress.
Yes, he did.
And this is a guy who, at first, he breaks a couple long runs against Cream Puffs early in the season, and they talk about him doing it. He doesn't practice all the time. He now has enough carries that it's no longer a fluke. The guy can run the football. He hits the hole hard. He's decisive. He's not a guy who's going to break a lot of tackles. I don't know that he's as elusive as Wayman Jordan is, but he's a guy who sees the hole and gets through it in a hurry, and you have to feel good about that. You also have to feel good about Jaden Maiava. Eric, we've been calling for Maiava to run the ball more consistently for a long time, and we hadn't seen much of it until the game where he can't throw the ball, and then he or Lincoln Riley or both decide, okay, I guess we're gonna use the legs, and you know what? Pretty effective, wasn't it?
There was one early that chase down backside King Miller. I think it was King Miller got brought down in the backfield, and you just thought that can't keep happening. Can't keep happening. And you wonder if someone in the coaching booth, box, field, whatever, somewhere, that can't keep happening. And yeah, it was a solid performance. There's been times where Jaden Miles run the ball and it felt like, did you want to run that? Like it was sort of tentative and hesitant and dancing around a little bit and that sort of thing. I mean, there were some like explosive runs away from defenders in that game. And I thought it was interesting that Lincoln Riley, I think it was this week heading into that game. It was sometime within the last 2 weeks, talked specifically about the decisions he's made to keep it or give it in the RPO, in the read game, all of that, and that they've been really good. And you just thought if it's felt like there's something more there for him to run a little bit. And I get that pulling and throwing has worked a lot, but they needed that. They need the run game opened up a little bit more. I mean, they probably would have been fine against that Nebraska front, just handing it off over and over and over. But that touchdown run at the end was huge. And what he did to sort of loosen things up. And when you basically add him as an extra blocker if he's going to occupy that backside pursuit. And that was significant. I mean, you talk about USC's passing game, Nebraska's running game. Like if you look strictly at Emmett Johnson's stat line, 29 for 165, a touchdown, averaged 5.7 a carry, and then Jade Maiava completed 9 passes for 135 yards and an interception. USC doesn't win that game. They don't win that game if you look at those two stat lines. And so that's where it comes down on you made the plays. I mean, you look at how Nebraska started the game defensively, offensively. That first possession for USC offensively, where they run it for 5 yards and then throw it, and then, sorry, we can't just line up and run it against Nebraska. We got to put offensive linemen out on the sideline and tight ends as lead blockers, 4-on-7 or whatever it was. And then they can't tackle Emmett Johnson consistently, and they just chip away, chip away, chip away down the field. That's where you're talking about, like, how did you start this game? Like, you didn't start it with the right mentality on either side. And even just if it's 3 runs and a punt offensively, it's the statement of, yeah, we're here to play physical football. We're going to run it straight at you. So I think that's where some of that, like, you start off so poorly, but then you catch yourself, and that's where Jay Mayav as a runner and a passer, like that's what struck me is that in a situation where it would have been easy to go in the tank, it would have been easy to not make the winning play like we saw all last season, to find the plays at the end and sort of stay within themselves and finish it the way he did again, Mayava with that touchdown run, with the running play inside the 10-yard line for the winning touchdown. Like, you fixed a lot of what went really wrong early, And I think you take something away from that, from making, I mean, basically every winning play in the fourth quarter, which is not something we've seen from this team.
Yeah, and what we have seen from this team is an ability to put an offensive line on the field that does enough to move the chains and give the team a chance to win. It's getting harder and harder every week. I mean, you get Elijah Page back. I'm not sure he's 100%, but he at least comes back. That's great. You still have your starting center out, and then 4 plays in, you lose your right guard, who's been, I mean, the one guy who's been at his position fairly consistently is Alani Noah. You lose him 4 plays in, you bring in a redshirt freshman. Um, Mark, is it about time to start talking about Zach Hansen being the most critical assistant coach on this staff? That's not something I expected to say, but it starts to look that way a little bit at this point, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember before the season started, all of us were concerned. What's your concern? Will the offensive line be able to coalesce, come together, and protect Jaden Mayaba? They've outperformed, and I think all of our expectations by far. And I alluded to it earlier. USC's actually relying on Kalon Miller to be a part of this rotation. Alani Noah, I don't know if he'll be available this Friday, depending on, what the actual injury is. I'm not sure if Lincoln Riley is going to make it official, make it known what it is. I'm not sure he's on schedule to start this week. That's all I'm going to say there. Elijah Page is back. Is he 100%? No. Is Keelan O'Connor back? Hopefully. John Ray Reed's been doing a good job, but the fact that they've been able to play musical chairs with that offensive line, it's what seems like every game, whether it's Tobias Raymond playing left tackle, right tackle, guard, whatever, they're getting the job done. They're not allowing Jaden to be sacked. I know that he got called for a couple of intentional grounding calls because he was going down, but for the most part, they pass protected extremely well, and nobody should be complaining about their run blocking because King Miller didn't just do it against a bunch of cream puffs. He did it against Michigan, and he just went on the road into a really tough environment and did it against Nebraska. Granted, they're not a great run defense, but still, he's not a scholarship player yet, but he looks like a scholarship player, and he's doing it behind a makeshift offensive line. So yeah, Zach Hansen deserves every single flower you want to throw at him.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like the offensive line has been perfect. They haven't. I mean, there were some false start penalties that were devastating, or potentially devastating Saturday. But when you just look at what he's had to work with, he's got a bunch of young guys that have been thrown in there at different spots. He's moving guys around every week, which is tough for an offensive line. Those guys have to work together. Cohesion matters. To be able to put the product on the field that they put on the field in light of the injury situation they've had has actually been fairly remarkable. He's done a great job.
I just posted the Monday Morale story, and I actually just drew this comparison. When Lincoln Riley took over, he inherited a gift of 4 core guys on the offensive line, Voorhees and Nealon and Diedich and Monheim. Those guys came in together. They learned how to play together. They developed together. They became a good offensive line. Guess who started on offensive line when USC started this season? It was the guys that they recruited. It wasn't the guys who came in through the transfer portal. So there's a lot to be said with that, to the point you're trying to make right now.
Yeah, and the future looks bright for the offensive line because, look, I'd be surprised if you didn't have just about all those guys come back next year. I know if Elijah Page would have played all year, not gotten hurt, and played really well, that's a guy who may leave early. Probably doesn't now. And you have a lot of young guys who are developing, so that next year you're gonna have a lot of depth. I mean, you look at it now and you say USC next year could come into the season with a preseason top 5 offensive line, and that's a pretty great place to be. So great job by him.
You've had, sorry, Chris,
Yeah.
they've had 5 different starting offensive line lineups this year in 8 games. 5 different ones in 8 games. They had 2 during the regular season last year, and only because they just wanted to look at Amos Talalele instead of Alani Noah for one start. I mean, that was it. Like not a single injury that cost a lineman a game during the regular season last year, and you've got five different lineups in 8 games. I mean, there's some injury issues across offensive lines all over the country or whatever, but that's a lot to deal with rotating in and out. Guys flipping sides, all new centers. I mean, it's been a lot to deal with.
Yeah, the 6-2 start is not a shock, right? That's a number that would have seemed reasonable to all of us before the year started. But if you would have told us USC is going to have this number, they're going to have this number of injuries in the offensive line. They're going to be moving guys all over the place. They're going to be playing walk-ons at right guard. They're going to, if you would have told us that, we would have said, and 6-2, okay, I'll take that because that sounds like a 4-4, 3-5 sort of situation. So that's nice. Now I want to go back to something that Greg had mentioned, which is that maybe USC should run the ball a little bit more. Now, people are going to yell at us because I think the final numbers were somewhere around 38 runs and 23 passes, and that looks like it's heavily weighted towards a run, and that is. But in the first half, it wasn't. And in the first half, it's hard to justify what was going on. I mean, Eric and I have both commented on this on the message board, but you know, you're running the ball down the field with big chunks, 16, 13, 15, you know, back to back to back runs. Then you get to the 7-yard line, you decide to call 3 pass plays and you settle for a field goal. Guys, I don't understand. And we talked about this before, and Lincoln Riley at times seems to be on the same page as the four of us. Against Michigan, ran the football. And there have been, even against Illinois, when USC wasn't running the ball great, they continued to run the ball and stay balanced. And so on one hand, I want to say, okay, Riley he has more faith in his group, and he's doing more of what we want him to do, and that's true. On the other hand, though, he still sometimes gets so cute. I mean, Nebraska can't stop the run. They haven't stopped it all year. USC's running the ball in big chunks. For whatever reason, Jaden Maiava is off and he can't do anything right. It seems to me that's a pretty good time to run the frickin' football, and I don't know why it took Lincoln Riley until the second half of that game to figure it out. Does anybody want to make a spirited defense of Lincoln Riley, or does everybody just want to pile on?
Well, I don't know if piling on is that's a pretty severe
A loaded
comment.
phrase.
What's that?
It's a loaded phrase.
It's a loaded phrase. It's an old phrase because I remember growing up, you're piling on and so on and so forth. Lincoln Riley is going to do what Lincoln Riley, that's what he is. I hate to say it. Look how he was trained, who he was around. In the end, he's had these Heisman Trophy quarterbacks that are going to, throw the ball. And, he's had some that can move and that sort of stuff. He's had good quarterbacks and they've done a great job, I think. But when you come down to just strategy, X's and O's, all that sort of stuff, look, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And my feeling is one of the things I will do, and I know that this annoys a lot of people, but it's because this is how I grew up and through it. Look at John McKay. I know I'm going back a zillion years. Everyone used to say, "Oh, he had the great tailbacks, and they really could, they really pump." He wasn't afraid to pass the ball. He would pass the ball, and he would run, an attack. I mean, you look at the '72 team. Again, I know what people are saying. Oh, please, enough of this. But they had a good quarterback in Mike Ray. You go to Pete Carroll's team, Matt Leinart. They ran the ball and threw the ball because it was a balanced thing. Now, I know that Lincoln Riley, whether he wants to admit it, maybe he has admitted, I don't know. He's a product of Mike Leach's offense. Yes, he's made it a running thing and has had success, and that's good. But in his brain, is he more likely to pass the ball or to run the ball or to give what the defense is getting? I mean, to me, as we all saw, when you're making chunks of yardage like they're doing, you know what? I don't care that Miami wasn't having a great game. I do care that the running game was really effective. And until they stop that running game, you know, look, if you get 15 yards on a run or you get 15 yards on a pass, if you know you can do it on the run, just continue to do it. It doesn't make sense the
I
other
think
way.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you
Oh,
had two in that game. Look, it's I people need to understand. Like, we understand what we're saying is not, oh, I should call plays instead of Lincoln Riley. Like, that guy absolutely knows what he's doing. There's a thought to it. Like, he has had a ton of success. I thought in this game specifically, and again, at the end of the first half, it's 17 runs, 16 passes. So it's not the 38-21 or whatever at the end. So it was far more like pass heavy in the first half, even though again you're one run up. But I thought you had two sort of program statement opportunities, and I'm not sitting there put like it's Neanderthal football. You should just 11 on the line of scrimmage and hand it to a fullback and crap like that. I get that that's not what football is anymore. The first drive when you got 5 yards on that pitch, and Lincoln Riley said after the game, like he didn't really like how King Miller ran that ball. Like what wasn't very good on his first attempt is what he said. That's a 5 yard run. I get it. He stops his feet. It's not like a physical finish to the run. It's 5 yards. Like I think you had a chance at that point, and especially on the 3rd and 5, to just line up and go, you know what? If they stop this, that's fine. But we're going to come out and we're going to show them that we're going to be physical tonight. We're going to run the ball at them because we don't think they can stop him. We think that over time, we are going to out physical this team in the run game. And again, you let them load the box against two tight ends and a couple linemen, and you pitch it to Makai Lemon. Now, I get wanting to get him touches sort of in a variety of ways. That felt like a concession of maybe we're not going to be able to run it at no, at Nebraska. And it's like you could never say that. And then the one we talked about where you get into the red zone after 3 long runs, again, I know it sounds dumb. Oh, run, you should just run, 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 run. But that's also another chance for a little bit of a program statement of, yeah, we're gonna keep this on you. Right? When Stanford did that to USC, like you felt every one of those runs just impacting the players, the coaches, the program, all of it. And so I think those two very specific areas were where it felt like, if you get down to the 7 and you run it 3 times and you don't get in, like people are gonna crush him for that. Why'd you do that? Throw it, you got all this passing, whatever. But it's a little bit like when you go 4th and short and you try to run it and you stop. It's like, you know what? You tried to make a statement. I get it. I get it. The guys feel like you have confidence in them to go get that play. So for me, it was just those two. I thought he was okay outside. Like I didn't have a ton of issues with a lot of it, but those two felt like sort of missed opportunities just to go in that environment and say, no, 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 we're here. This is how we're going to do this tonight.
I had a slightly different take on it in that I thought in the second half, Lincoln Riley actually came around to a Chris Arledge and Greg Katz style of play calling, right? I mean, when he got in the second half, when he got down to 1st and goal inside the 10, he handed it to the running back who scored a touchdown on the first carry. He had a 4th and 2. He gave it to Brian Jackson. It didn't work, but he did it. And in the second half, they really committed to the run. My frustration in the first half is that Nebraska was daring him to run. There were plays where Nebraska had 5 guys in the box, and I'm screaming at my television because they have 5 in the box, and USC's throwing an incomplete pass with a quarterback who clearly wasn't on his game. That was insane. You can't do that stuff. And it's one thing if Nebraska came out like Notre Dame had and committed to stopping the run, and so you say, all right, well, they're going to put 7 in the box, and their linebackers are going to be coming downhill. Then we're going to throw the ball around the yard a little bit. I got no problem with that. But when you have a weak run defense, and Nebraska does, and you're putting 5 in the box, and you have a running back who's been pretty consistently good for you, you give him the football. That was a mistake. And USC found themselves down 14-6 at the half because Lincoln Riley was being stubborn because he wanted to be clever. That's the reality. And I wasn't cool with that. Second half was a different story, especially after Jaden Mava throws that horrible interception early, right? You're down 14-6, and then he throws that pick. That's the sort of thing that last year could easily have turned into a disastrous road loss. But the defense gets a stop, and then Lincoln Riley says, all right, we're going to run the football. And running the football worked, as we knew it would against a Nebraska team that's not very good against the run.
See, for me, it's just about changing the narrative. I don't want us asking the same questions, next year that we're asking, talking about this year that we talked about last year. You don't want to hear opposing coaches like PJ Fleck said, we know USC can run the ball, but we know they want to throw the ball. That was that situation. You had first and goal at the 7-yard line where Coach Riley could have said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to let that statement, be that monkey on my back anymore. But instead, he kept it out there. Instead of, like you said, running the ball. You don't have to do it all 3 times. Try it once, see what happens on first down. Take that whole, well, we know USC is going to throw the ball out of the equation. Make the other team guess. And a lot of times you don't have to guess what's going on when Coach Riley is calling the plays.
So let's flip it then. Let's talk about USC's run defense. We knew coming into this game that Nebraska they had a good quarterback. They had a talented quarterback. I don't know if he's a good quarterback. He's a talented kid. But they didn't have a very explosive passing game, but they had a good running back. We knew that, and he is good, right? That guy breaks a lot of tackles. He's good. They never really let him get loose on any big runs, but he certainly got his and moved the chains. But Eric, this is a game where USC did something schematically to sort of help their run defense and help their inside linebacker. We should probably talk about that because I was pleased with what Danton Lynn decided to do this week.
It was Desmond Stevens' best game, and you could feel the confidence he had where it was just, I'm gonna go hit that guy. I'm gonna go hit that guy and shoot this gap on the snap, and I'm gonna be reactive and moving forward. And he made more impactful plays in that game than he has the entire season combined. He was involved and around the ball and playing at just a heightened level. Like you could feel the confidence that he had, and USC needed that. They needed him to get that because they clearly Jaden Walker has gotten some snaps, right? Tamir Robinson has gotten some snaps. There's based on how much Desmond Stevens played that game, there's clearly no rush to get him off the field and okay, we'll get somebody in. Like the coaches clearly see him as the guy right now, and he's going to get those snaps. So for him to turn in that kind of performance, there's stuff in there there's stuff in there for everyone that you got to clean up and you want to be better at. But letting him attack downhill, a lot of those runs that got out, if you look back, he's not in there, right? It's not him or wasn't his spot. And that's not something that we've been able to say a whole lot in that one. So he's the guy for me that really stood out as coming away thinking, oh, okay, I see what they can do with him, and there were some plays in there from him.
The problem USC's had so often is that Desmond Stevens just seems confused, right? I think they're putting too much on his plate. They're expecting him to read things that at this point in his career he is not able to read. As a result, they played with 10 against the run game most of the time because he's confused and he stands there passive, waiting for a lineman to get to him. It was then, and if you don't have somebody you can put in who can play the position against the run the way you want to, then you do exactly what Danton Lynn did, and you take away the read and react, you take away the thought process, and you just send him on run blitzes. Because the thing is, Desmond is a good athlete and he's a pretty good tackler. And it's not like the guy doesn't have some talent. He does have some talent. The problem is that he's standing around not sure what to do. So Dan Lynn said, fine, we're just going to run blitz him. And he did it a lot. And it was pretty consistently successful. And with a Northwestern team that runs the ball and doesn't throw it very well, with an Iowa team that runs the ball and doesn't throw it very well, and an Oregon team that runs the ball really well, I think you've got to expect that USC is going to do a lot more of that and just send that guy screaming at the line of scrimmage to make a play. So good job, Dan Lynn, doing quality defensive coordinator things. And I think that helped quite a bit.
I'm curious what you and Greg thought when you saw it on TV, when you saw the three linebackers of Desmond, Jaden, and Matai Tagoai lined up together with Gentry on the bench, because I was a little curious. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to make of that. Whenever Eric Gentry's out of the game, I assume it's because he's banged up. Because otherwise, I don't see much reason to pull him off the field. But that's when you talk about bringing in Tagai, you're talking about bringing in a guy who has some rare athletic gifts. He's not very big. He's not a guy who ordinarily you think of as someone you're going to put in there against a team who wants to smash the tailback off tackle over and over again. But he can move and he can do some things. And as he gets bigger, I suspect you're going to see a lot from him. But was I surprised to see it? Yeah, I was surprised to see it because it didn't seem like the type of game that called for his skill set. But
Well, the way they did it too, right? He was way out, like sort of playing nickel out in space, and you saw it. I mean, the pass rush that he brought and the spin move around the tackle, like oh, okay. And then of course he brings pressure this way. The ball goes right behind him to that guy. The next play, it looked like Desmond C was trying to pass off the tight end to them, and Matai's pulled way up. The ball goes over his head, and he's back to the sideline there. So some freshman stuff, but no, he's a guy. You've got maybe four true freshmen on defense where, if we could, maybe, coaches are like, maybe they could get some snaps, maybe they could get some snaps. You haven't seen him sort of poured in yet, but he's one of those guys that's been, carved out a spot on special teams. He's in there for that. And then if you're going to play a freshman the whole season, you may as well, and you think he's going to contribute next year because I mean, you got to figure out what's going on with Eric Gentry's spot next year. It makes sense to get a guy like that, a little bit of time to see it a little bit.
Greg, let's talk about the secondary a bit because this seems like the first game in a long time when USC's coaches decided to trust the secondary. Now, it helped a little bit in the second half that they had a freshman quarterback that they didn't think could make a pass. But even earlier in the game, it seemed like they were more willing to let the corners play and not try to protect them so much. And I think we're seeing improvement back there. Don't you agree?
I agree that they're learning and they're being put in. I think playing at Nebraska is a tremendous learning experience for someone secondary. But I caution for myself to remember that Nebraska didn't have Riola at quarterback. And to me, the real test of these corners can be in the second half, middle of the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, when the pressure of winning and not making a mistake. I mean, Nebraska, honestly, they had the running attack to make it really difficult if they had a passing attack that was really working. And Riola has been sacked so many times during the season that he's gun shy, and of course it got to him, and they really, hats off to Anthony Lucas and to others that were a part of that. Uh, my feeling is they still haven't faced a quarterback yet that's really going to test them to the point. I mean, Oregon might do it. I think
Oregon will definitely do it.
they'll definitely do it.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm not saying that they're bad at this point, but they still have to face better competition to make me feel like, when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
look,
I don't
go
think
ahead.
you just erase that Dylan Raiola didn't play. I mean, that guy's averaging 6 yards an attempt when he goes out, which would rank like, I don't know, 140th in the country. Like he was not 10 of 15, yeah, but he wasn't carving them up. Like the end probably goes differently, but I don't think you just erase that USC was doing pretty well defensively against him, and he got a ball right. When he gets hurt, he gets a ball in crazy advantageous field position and can't do anything with it, gives it back up. So I think they did a pretty good job, and like I said, the backup wasn't going to complete a pass. They still give him a couple shots to throw it downfield, and the corners made good plays. Like they were in good position, made good plays on the ball. Finally leaned a little bit on they're not going to throw pass interference flags every single time, and you saw a few like actually physical plays on the ball.
Yeah, I'm not ready to say that the USC secondary and especially the corners are an elite group. That doesn't make any sense. I am suggesting that we've seen real improvement from Illinois to Nebraska, and you're talking about a group that seems to understand where to line up. They seem to understand leverage. They are doing a better job of being in the area and making a play on the ball. I mean, the USC secondary against Illinois was awful, just awful, and hard to watch. The USC secondary against Nebraska looked like guys who know what they're doing, until it comes to knowing when to shut your mouth. And look, guys, you can't make a mistake like that. You cannot give them 15 yards when it's 2nd and 15 and the other team's offense is struggling and you're about to take over the game, which is where they were. You can't do that. It's not smart. And what bothers me is that chirping is going on just about every play, and it continued to go on just about every play, even after that really bad penalty. That needs to stop. It may be that the Miami Hurricanes in the 1980s were good enough that they could talk and taunt and get flags and still beat you by 30. This USC defense is not good enough that they should be running their mouths at all. And you certainly can't afford to do it in a close game when giving the team a first down on what would have been a 2nd and 15 could cost you the points that lose you the game. That stuff has to stop. And ultimately it's on the USC coaching staff to do something about it. And I know it's hard when you have one experienced corner you trust. It's hard to pull him off the field when he makes a mistake like that. But if you don't do that, then you're probably going to get something similar against Iowa or Oregon, and it's going to hurt you. This has to stop, right? I mean, it just has to stop. I don't know if there's anything else to be said.
Well, I thought it was, very disappointing to me. The officials let it go. I thought they were, give them credit, they were consistent. Guys were, telling the crowd, be quiet. I shut your receiver down and all that sort of stuff. To me, I guess I'm just too old school with it. My feeling is look, just play ball and let the reaction of the play speak for itself. You don't have to tell everyone, by doing that, to me, it just tells me you're distracted by the crowd. You're listening to the crowd, fires up the crowd even more. I think you want to shut a crowd up, make a great play, make a good play, make a solid play. You think, what are you proving by sitting there going, I can't hear you, or to me that's doesn't do anything for me personally.
I mean,
Just don't do it to their bench. That's it. Don't direct it to their bench. That's it. I mean that's the rule. That's where the flag came, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to stop. You're not going to stop them from celebrating. You're not going to stop them from doing that. It's part of part of what gets them going. All that sort of stuff, right? You're not going to stop a guy from listening to music on the field before the game starts during his warm-ups. Don't direct it at their bench, and that's pretty clear. So that's where it's not a passionate whatever. That's just a don't turn your head that way. Like that. I mean, that's an easy thing to follow.
Look,
Yeah.
the thing that I was looking at the end of the third quarter, because we know the only way you get through to a player is by taking away their playing time. When that quarter ended and Nicholson came off the field. I wanted to see which coach met him and kind of use that as a teachable moment. It was Trovon Reed. It was his position coach. He gave him about a good 20-second ass chewing. And then right after that, they had a little bit of a low five, go get him. But Chris, you just said it. I'm now wondering, do the players recognize, hey, I'm not coming off the field? We haven't seen in the last couple of games. It's been DeCarlos, it's been Marcellus at cornerback. I hope they're not taking advantage of the situation, knowing they're not going to put the backup in. They're going to stick with me, and I can do whatever I want. So that is my concern.
We'll see, and hopefully not. But look, I'm okay with guys getting excited. I'm okay with a little exuberance out there. That's natural. A little showboating. I mean, if you watch games on Sunday, you see it nonstop. I can understand that's just part of football culture now. But you have to be smarter, and you can't afford to give up. You can't afford to give up 15 yards and a first down in a tight game on the road. You can't. So, okay. Let's close out Nebraska with this. Let's talk about some clutch performers. Last year, USC had the best punter in the country. This year, they haven't punted a whole lot, but that punt at the end of the game, when the drive stalls and USC needs to pin them deep and you stick them at the 4, that is clutch. That is a guy coming through in a big way. And he's not the only specialist that does it, because Ryan Sayuri does it every single week. The guy is money. It doesn't matter how loud the crowd is. It doesn't matter how long the field goal is. It doesn't matter how much pressure there is. He steps up and knocks it through. So those two guys, major kudos, right? I mean, really, really impressive. And Eric, how many times over the last few years, let's go back to the last couple of years of Clay Helton's tenure, not because we want to, but just because it's relevant. How many times?
I'm not going to have this exact number, just so you know, before you ask.
Yeah, you are. How many times in that span has USC's defense needed to make a stop at the end of the game?
Oh, zero. The answer is zero. Zero.
The answer is zero.
Yeah.
It has practically never happened. I understand that Nebraska team had a beat up O-line and a freshman quarterback. I understand all that.
Right, Michigan too. That's the drive. That's the drive where Emmett Johnson slips through, somebody falls down or runs into somebody, and he's 70 yards out the back. Right? Isn't that a little bit of like back of your mind? Here it is, right? Here's the road. And that's kind of what my point was, where yeah, that Nebraska team, if they win that game, they're not going to go win the playoff this year. They're not going to win the Big Ten. But they were good enough to scare you a little bit, and USC made the winning plays, right? The punt, the defense, the stop, the whatever. Like that's yes.
USC has given up touchdowns in that situation to bad offenses for about the last 6 or 8 years.
Yes.
So yes, I know that the Nebraska offense at that point wasn't great. I know they had to start at their own 4. I know they didn't have a lot of time on the clock. Whatever, I've still seen that go south. The fact that it didn't go south this time and didn't even come close to going south is still something to celebrate. I mean, that's a good thing. And it's important for your defense to know that they can go out there when they have to get a stop and get one to win a game. Frankly, you could say they did it twice, because after that pick at the start of the third quarter, that was the sort of situation where past USC teams give up a touchdown, and now it's 21-6, and the game's effectively over. It's happened over and over and over again. It did not happen Saturday. So the defense wasn't great all the time, but they got some stops when they needed it. And how long has it been that we've been talking about, look, the defense doesn't have to be a top 5 unit, but they have to be able to get some key stops during the course of a game. They did it Saturday.
And that, give me those. If I can only take one or the other, I'll give up that first drive to get those ones in the second half, right? Yeah, let's do it on both sides. But if you're going to start like that, make adjustments, and then pick it up as the game goes on, great. Finish that way.
Yep.
Let me take the role of host here for a second. Chris.
Yeah.
I think would we all agree that USC's best defensive performance this year was at home against Michigan?
Yes, I think that's probably right.
Would we say that USC's worst defensive performance this year was on the road at Notre Dame?
It might be a tie between Notre Dame and Illinois, but
I'm gonna pick the
okay.
Notre Dame game. Okay,
Yeah.
quibble about that. USC's defensive performance against Nebraska was in the middle, somewhere between their best and their worst. If USC brings that type of defensive presence energy for the remaining 4 games, what's their record?
They finished 9-3.
You're still not up at what's going on there. Okay.
I have to see. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this in a couple weeks. I have to see USC actually show up on the road and play well on both sides of the ball from kickoff to the final whistle before I think they're going to go to Autzen and beat an Oregon team that has a playoff on the line.
I'm just talking about that side of the ball.
Yeah.
Is that an acceptable level of defense for USC this year?
There's a lot. It was good enough Saturday, and it will be good enough if they play that way this Saturday, and it'll probably be good enough if they play that way against UCLA. That defensive performance probably isn't enough to beat an elite team, but frankly, but look, let's take what we can get. The defense stepped up, held a team to 17 points, and got a couple of critical stops in times when last year and the year before that and the year before that they would have given up touchdowns. That's something to celebrate. I'm happy with that. They need to get better. They know that, but I'm happy about that.
Well, you know what? Honestly, Chris, let's you go by the schedule now. Unless I'm wrong, the next 3 out of 4 games are at home.
They are.
And so the only away game they're going to have is at Oregon, and that's probably as tough as you can get in college football for the most part, unless you're Indiana or something, you go in there and do something like that. But
it is equivalent to going to South Bend right now, I think.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a major challenge. But well, let's talk about the first of those home games coming up. Northwestern, this is not a game that you have circled on the calendar before the year. Northwestern is not a great football team, but they're a football team this year, right? They're 5-3. They run the ball. They run the ball pretty well. They're not explosive offensively, but they run the ball pretty well. They're a pretty physical defense. This is not a game that USC should lose by any means. But Northwestern's better than you might expect them to be, and this is a team that if you don't play well can actually be hanging around in the fourth quarter, right? I mean, Eric, what do you see when you look at this? You have family connections, so you probably have to be careful talking about Northwestern. But what do you see with this Northwestern team?
They're boring. They're boring, and you have to be okay. You have to be okay being bored. Like you can't get tired of being bored in this game. They do not create explosive plays on offense. They will chip away at you and chip away at you. They do not allow explosive plays on defense. You have to put long drives together. You cannot just say, I'm tired of getting 4 yards of carry. I want a 75-yard pass play and I'm going to throw it deep because it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there. If you get frustrated, their linebacker is in a passing lane and now you're in trouble. And that's it. That's it. You hold on to the ball, you take your 5 to 8 yards or whatever it is on each play, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. They can't out-athlete USC at all. It's a little like you look at the Oregon game. Oregon had to go out to Northwestern, and Oregon was in control of that game the whole way. But the run game wasn't explosive. They had one run pop big. The rest of it, they averaged 4 yards a carry. Oregon against Northwestern, they averaged 4 yards a carry. They didn't throw it all that well. Like nothing over 30 yards in a pass play. And so they held the ball. They scored on long drives, and they got 2 picks because Preston Stone will throw a pick. He'll throw 2. He'll throw 4 if you let him. And so I think that's it. I think it's a discipline test for USC, players, coaches, all of it. Can you be bored, stay involved, and just put drives together and win this game? Because if you mess around, yeah, it's 27-24 in the fourth quarter, and you got to figure something out, and you haven't moved the ball well, and that sort of thing. Um, but it's college football, so watch USC put four 70-yard plays together for the first time against Northwestern all year. But no, that's what Northwestern does when they bring it in. The game is played right here in short, tight bursts, and you got to win more of those than they do.
Yeah, Mark, this game has its own challenges. It's a short week. Because it's a Friday night and it's Northwestern, I think the crowd will be maybe the four of us and 18 other people. So there's not going to be a ton of energy in the building, I don't suspect. And you're playing against a team that's disciplined and smart, and we'll sit around and wait for you to screw up. And if you screw up, they're going to be there with a chance to win the game. This is not Michigan, Notre Dame, or at Nebraska, the last three games where, I mean, the energy in the place is off the charts. So that poses some obstacles. So tell me, Mark Culkin, is USC going to overcome those obstacles and play well on both sides of the ball?
If they don't want me to write scathing stories about them, they better. Look, I just want a consistent effort. That's all I look for. Whether they win by 50, whether they win by 4 points. I just want to, Eric, you bring it up every week we're on the show. Coaches use the word consistency over and over and over again. Why can't we expect consistent development on a week-to-week basis? Chris, you laid it out there. You're playing against a team that, for all intents and purposes, is Stanford light back in the day when they were in the Pac-10, Pac-12. Don't make any mistakes. It's going to come back to beat you. Don't let a team hang around that at the end of the game, you're saying, all right, well, all we need is a field goal. All we need is a touchdown. Put enough distance between you and Northwestern's really mediocre offense, because there's no reason they should be on the field with USC. There really isn't. And USC's
Mediocre is big praise for them, Mark.
Yeah, they're probably not that
I
good.
don't know if they're that good.
My point is, we all agree there's no reason Northwestern should be in this game in the second half, especially if USC's offense is clicking in the first half. If USC is just playing at 80% of their potential, this game should be over by the end of the third quarter.
I agree with that. Now, Greg Katz, let me give you a scenario.
I wish you would.
Okay. Northwestern understands that they can't take away everything from USC's offense. They don't have the athletes to do that. But they know that USC is impatient. And they know that USC does not want to have 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 5-yard run for a first down, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3. They know USC doesn't want to play that way. They know Lincoln Riley doesn't want to do that. And so if I'm Northwestern, I say, I'm not going to get beat over the top. I'm not going to blitz my offense and put my corners in one-on-one against Makai Lemon or Jacoby Lane. I'm not going to do anything so stupid. I'm going to have a lot of 3- and 4-man rushes against the pass. I'm going to not let USC break any long runs. And if they pick up 5 on first down, they pick up 5 on first down. I'm going to wait for Lincoln Riley to get impatient and call something silly, or USC to lose their composure a little bit and push somebody after a whistle. Right? I'm just going to wait for that to happen because I think it's going to happen. That's my strategy if I'm Northwestern. 1, do you agree with the strategy? Number 2, you tell me how Lincoln Riley and his football team are going to deal with it Saturday.
You know, there's only 4 games left in the regular season. 3 out of 4 is in the Collie. And my feeling is they all know they're still in the fight to get a playoff berth. But so are other teams. I mean, Northwestern is, if you look at the Big Ten, they're 3-2. That means they have one more loss than USC has. But I think SC is going to come to play in the next 4 games. That is my expectation because they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And nobody's going to want to do anything to screw it up. I'm not saying they won't screw it up, but the bottom line is there's less chance in my mind that they won't screw it up. You know, I used to say, oh, I'm worried about Friday night games. I don't think it makes a difference where we're at right now, a Friday night game. They can see that we've got to beat Northwestern, and then with the season is a 3-game season, and they're going to take each one as it comes. So I suspect that they're going to do a pretty good job with Northwestern. The thing about Northwestern, I think Mark brought it up, was the idea that they are kind of a Stanford to me. They have smart players. You know, they don't have the superstar quarterback that Stanford has had in the past. You know, each quarter that Northwestern can stay in the game is a bad thing for USC, because they start to get, hey, maybe we can win this game. You know, maybe we can be a part of it. I don't think the time change coming out here on a Friday is going to make much difference. You know, it's 8 o'clock their body time. Okay, no big deal. But I think that they compete. And when I've watched them play, they compete. And that's the first thing I always look at. You know, you want to stop a team from competing? Get a big lead against them and make them start thinking we're going to get blown out. But as long as they're in the game, they're going to compete and they're going to be smart. And look, they beat Purdue 19-0. Compare that to USC. They've beaten UCLA during the situation. I think with Deshaun Foster still there. Okay, I think. Bottom line to it is they you know, they had Penn State. They beat Penn State. You know, they've had enough to know what it's like when they're going to be compatible. Now they lost to Nebraska, okay, and they got creamed by Oregon, which is no embarrassment really.
But not as bad as you would have expected them to get.
No,
beat
it was
by Oregon.
34-14 with Oregon. Okay, so my feeling is I expect that they're going to give SC a pretty good game if SC doesn't come and convert on offense and get a big lead, and the Lincoln Riley chooses the correct course of how to call plays. You know, I hear all the time that he's this great play caller. You know, he knows how to get, you know, advantage for his talent compared to yours, which is great. But in the end, it's about winning a football game and not brownie points and that sort of stuff. And he's got to make decisions that are going to make sure that his team, you know, gets ahead of Northwestern in a good way, that it's not a close game in the fourth quarter. But I will end with this. SC's field goal kicker is All-American, as far as I'm concerned. And this guy can hit him from anywhere, under any pressure. He's hit it, you know, Notre Dame, he's hit it where you want it. So that is a big advantage if the game is close. That this, you know, I hope SC doesn't start scoring field goals instead of touchdowns.
Yeah, me too. Okay. You know, we're going straight to predictions. I know they're releasing the first of the college football committee's polls, but that's going to be tomorrow, and I don't want to try to predict it. I'd rather just wait until they come out with something and then talk about how dumb it is next week. So we're going straight to predictions. Mark Culkin, I'm starting with you. You are the optimistic man of the bunch. I want you to give me a score and a couple of sentences explaining why you feel the way you feel.
Can you tell me what the line is right now? Honestly, I don't know.
It was 14.5, 16.5, something like that.
All right. I think USC is going to bounce back on the opposite side of the ball. Hopefully, Jaden Mihalba bounces back and has a strong performance. Let's go USC 38, Northwestern 20.
Okay, I take that. Eric McKinney.
31-17 USC.
Greg Katz.
I'll agree with Eric. I think it's going to be 17 for Northwestern. And I guess I'll go with
71 for USC.
Actually, I was going to go into the
Greg blowout.
Yeah. No, I think for me it's going to be probably around 38, but I could see 41.
I've got 31-10. I think that USC is going to play well in this one. Northwestern, it does not have an explosive offense. They're not going to scare Denton Lynn. I think he's going to go ahead and once again commit his linebackers to stop the run and play against Northwestern outside guys that don't frighten him, and I think that will work fine. USC will bounce back. They're going to have to be patient, so I don't think they're going to put up huge points, but I think they'll be patient enough. They'll run the football, they'll throw short passes, they'll move the ball down the field. It's just hard to imagine USC not handling Northwestern under these circumstances at home. It would take a meltdown. I do not anticipate a meltdown. 31-10 Trojans, and it sets up 2 gigantic weeks after that.
3.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if UCLA is still playing football in 3 weeks. I don't know what they're doing over there. They went from being the worst team in the country to being the hottest team in the country to getting beat 56-6. I don't know what to make of the Bruins right now. And
I don't want to experience any type of 13-9 scenario. So it's going
hey, we've all been watching that series long enough to know that bad UCLA teams sometimes do horrible things to USC. So we'll wait on that. But anyway, guys, any final words before we cut it off?
Let's get it on.
Let's get it on, he says. All right, that's what we're going to do. All right, well, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll come back and have a 7-2 record next week and feel good about ourselves. Until then, fight on, everybody.